The Color Matrix, World 19. The Kernow Tyrant's Best Lieutenant. I'd taken a week off from using the Color Matrix. I went home, saw my family, did some training with Sparks and the other mysteries, but now I had returned. The door slid closed behind me and locked as I walked in.
"Hello, sir. I hope you enjoyed your week vacation,"
Daisy said. "I did, thanks, and now I'm ready, so let's kick it," I replied as I sat down at the console. I instantly went to the Power Rangers multiverse and tracked the Red Cornish Ranger. I found myself obsessed with Mark's little journey and the universes that he visited. I found him leaving a universe and instantly locked it in and sent it over to the Matrix. I stirred and stripped off my shirt as I laid on the bed. The needles punctured the back of my neck and my fingertips.
"Sir, the universe you have chosen has a fierce ruler known as King Trelawney, a universe variant of Mark, the Red Cornish Ranger himself,"
Daisy explained. "Oh, great. Sounds like a blast," I said sarcastically. Daisy then read out my vital signs as I lost consciousness. I woke up and climbed out of bed, stripped on my uniform, and then I left my room and marched through the halls. Other soldiers nodded at me in respect. I marched out of the soldiers' dorm and headed for the castle. I walked in and headed for the throne room. I knocked on the door and waited to be allowed in. And then I waited for what felt a very long time. I then heard some commotion coming from within the throne room, so I barged through the doors to see my king on his knees, grasping at his neck, and a royal blue ranger, chuckling to herself, stood over him with a sword in her hand. Without a second thought, I jumped high into the air and pulled out my morpher, and I held it out and it opened. "Saber-tooth Sentry!" I called out, and I morphed into the Saber-tooth Sentry. I pulled out my twin Saber-tooth dagger, bayonet pistols, and opened fire. My laser blast rained down above the Royal Blue Ranger. She rolled out of range of my blaster shots. I landed close to her and I lunged forward, swinging the pistols. The dagger blades that pointed downward slipped past the Royal Blue Ranger's suit as she expertly dodged my attacks. She threw a kick out and hit me in the side. I staggered, which allowed her to swing her sword and slash me. I was knocked off my feet and I crashed to the ground, my heavy armor securing me from harm. I stood up and shot at the ground where she stood, forcing her to jump in the air. I then took the chance and I jumped forward and rammed all my weight into her. We both crashed to the ground, both of us dropping our weapons. I jumped up, lunged onto her, and I slammed both my fists into her torso and her head. She grunted in pain as I made impact. She then teleported from underneath me, appearing next to her weapon, and she was clearly worn out. She picked up her sword and she opened a portal. "I came to kill, not to fight a lapdog." "Good one, Tiger. Maybe next time," the Royal Blue Ranger grunted. Then she walked through the portal and the portal disappeared. I climbed to my feet, retrieved my weapons, and I demorphed. I then pulled my king to his feet and helped him to his throne.
Good work, Lieutenant. You did fine work there. What is your name, soldier?
The king asked me. "Ace, sir," I replied. I stood tall and I saluted like a good soldier would.
Well, Ace, I believe I have a mission for you. A delicate, secret, and very valuable mission. You have displayed a great act of loyalty and a wish for you to take this mission and execute it immediately, without haste.
King Trelawney told me. "Of course, sir," I replied, not breaking my salute. King Trelawney then pressed the arm of his throne and the communication device on my wrist beeped.
I have just sent you the coordinates. A powerful foe is building forces. I need the entire camp eliminated. I want no survivors. I also want no word of this to anyone. If word leaks out that there was ever a slither of resistance, who knows what damage that could have.
King Trelawney ordered. I nodded and I walked away. I left the castle and headed to the shipping docks where I found a ship and climbed aboard. My communications device linked to the ship's autopilot system and the ship roared to life and took off, soaring through the black stormy clouds, and I sat there scanning through the information that was presented to me. Turns out someone had tried to start the Ninja Academy back up and running. The Thunder Academy had been turned to rubble but seemed it was still suitable for a rebel alliance of some kind. The ship stopped and descended to the ground. As the door opened, I walked out and walked through the rubble. No solid structure was stood. Every wall was in multiple pieces, every roof tile laid on the ground. I walked through the place. It was quiet and daunting when suddenly an old man stepped out in front of me. "Walk away, soldier. You're not wanted here," the old man said. "You are building a rebel alliance, an army against my king," I replied. "A king who rules with blood-soaked hands," the man roared back at me. "Do not speak ill of my king," I snapped back. "I cannot sit here knowing the way the world used to be, knowing that the next generation of warriors will never know what a hot meal is, what music sounds like, what fresh air is supposed to smell like. Allow them to wake up to the sound of an alarm clock instead of the sound of blaster fire. Allow them to experience chocolate and lemonade. Allow them to be children, not soldiers. Or worse, alone," the man hissed. "I will have to end you for your words alone. But you, students, will not see tomorrow," I told the old man. I pulled out my morpher and I morphed once again into the Saber-tooth Sentry. The old man dragged 1 foot across the ash and dirt and steadied his old bones and took his fighting stance. I ran at him and threw a fist. He raised his arm in defense and the earth shifted, creating a wall of solid rock before him. My fist collided with the wall, cracking it ever so slightly. I'm a master of the ways of the ninja, a forgotten art. Studied all forms of elemental power. My body may be reaching 100 years on this planet, but I'm spry as a teenager, the old man said at me. I jumped over the wall and I kicked out. As he jumped back, dodging my attack, he swirled his arms and threw his hands out and a blast of wind erupted, which hit me, and I fell into the wall once again. He then leapt forward and slammed his fists into me multiple times, and he was right. He might have been an old man, but his attacks were powerful and full of force. I threw my elbow down and then jabbed at him. I then threw another jab, but he grabbed my arm and crushed my wrist guard, and I grunted in pain as my wrist became restricted underneath the dented armor. I gripped the wall and raised both legs and kicked out, kicking the old man back. I then pulled out both my pistols and I opened fire. The man moved with great speed, becoming almost a blur as he hopped around. He stopped as I stopped firing. He looked down at his bare foot, was now stood in a puddle. He gave me a smirk and he raised his foot and threw out 2 fingers, and the water from the puddle moved on its own, moved as if it was alive. It flew directly at me. I then tried to lunge forward and dodge the attack, but the water moved and I got doused in water. I stood there dripping wet. "What are you trying to do? Give me a bath?" I retorted. The old man did not reply, just grinned as he held both his hands out, only pointing out his 2 fingers. Suddenly, lightning erupted from his extended fingers. It roared and sparked around his hand. He then threw out both his hands. Lightning zapped towards me. It moved incredibly fast. I didn't have time to react as I got hit. The water soaking my armor acted like a conductor, and I stood there in pain as it rippled through my body. It felt like 1,000 needles piercing my skin. I screamed and lightning finally died down. I dropped to my knees. My armor was still smoking and rather hot. The old man stood there laughing. I took a deep breath in. I moved with every ounce of strength I had left. I stabbed the tips of my daggers in the old man's shoulders, blood erupting everywhere. I pulled him down and smashed his face on my knee. I left my daggers in his shoulders as I threw punch after punch, hitting him across the face. Eventually, he hit the ground, his face now unrecognizable. He spat out blood and looked up at me. I removed my dagger pistols from his shoulders as he stared at me in awe and sorrow. "Please, don't kill my students," he pleaded. I aimed one of my pistols at him. "My orders are my orders," I replied, and I pulled the trigger. I quickly found a basement. I opened the door and descended down the staircase. I was expecting a room full of teenagers or young adults ready to fight me. I was in no state on taking on a small army of semi-capable fighters training to be ninjas. I walked into the basement, but I found children. The age range was easily between 7 and 12. They weren't fighters, let alone soldiers. They could barely hold the title of a resistance. They all knelt or sat in a huddle, fear-stricken and slightly hopeful that I was the old man who laid dead outside. The oldest kid stood up and held up his fists. He clenched his knuckles as his hand shook. His legs could barely hold his posture. I held out both my pistols. My moral compass opposed my next action. I pulled both the triggers in the name of my king. I was of course his best lieutenant. I closed my eyes as the basement was lit by the flash of my laser blasts, and suddenly everything went dark. I woke up and I jumped off the table. I shook my body, trying to rid the horrible feeling I just had in my stomach.
Sir, your 8 hours here was 3 hours and 21 minutes in that universe. How was your experience?
Daisy asked. Nope, that universe was terrifying. Not in the big bad monster way of the horror movie theme, kaiju dominating scary. Nah. This was a monster in human form. How can a person be like that? I blurted.
Mark handled his hardships completely differently in that universe. I can see why you would find that scary, sir.
Daisy stated. No, I wasn't talking about Mark. Sure, he was scary, but I was talking about myself. I sighed. I took a deep breath as I sat down. I slightly hated myself, that version of myself. I was very tempted to take another vacation, except this time I was tempted to extend it from a week to possibly forever.
What you have just listened to is a product created by the Three Ranger Bros Studio.
Hosted by 3 cosplaying fathers who
happen to be massive geeks of all sorts of fandoms.
They are Mark, the Red Cornish Ranger,
Cosplay Dude 637,
and Ty Tiger.
The studio covers different types of YouTube videos, TikToks, podcasts, and live streams.
If you wish to find out who cosplays who, the YouTube channel, the TikTok accounts, and the podcasts, and all of the other social media platforms,
please go to the 3rangerbrostudios.com.